We'll just see. It's like at some level, it's a total moonshot dream, but I've been in the business of moonshot dreams since the beginning. So
Yeah.
bring it, like I love it.
Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast, where I talk to artists and music fans to explore how music connects us through great stories and experiences. Brought to you by the Listening Room Network. Today's guest, Korby Lenker. How are you?
I'm doing great, Fran. It's great to be here.
It's great to finally connect with you. Just so that people take this podcast seriously, we do a formality at the beginning. It's called Proof of Pants, to make sure that people are not too casual when they come on the Fran Snyder Podcast.
I mean, on the early side of the quarantine, there might have been a problem, but I'm sort of out in the world a little bit more than I was a few months ago. So we're good to go.
So you've adjusted well. So first things, let's talk about Thousand Springs. I know you're working on new stuff now, but I think it's a good way to intro maybe where you grew up.
Sure.
And kind of tell us how, basically, where you grew up, what age you left, and then what made you decide to go back there for this recording.
Wow. That's a great question. I wasn't in a particularly musical family growing up, but my parents, part of their strategy for being good parents was to give me piano lessons or assign me piano lessons. And that was the music that was in our house, basically me driving everybody nuts practicing or being forced to practice. But I kind of liked it, and I did piano for 8 years, and I don't know, how does that stuff work when you're little? It's a little mysterious. It's like I could do it, and then people treated me like I could do it, and so I continued to believe them. And so there I was just kind of, I guess I had an inclination at an early age to actually play music, but that said, my parents didn't really listen to music very much. They were, I don't think that they've ever bought an album in their whole lives, to be honest. That's crazy, huh? Yeah. And it wasn't until I was in 8th grade that I befriended this kid whose parents were the coolest people in Twin Falls, Idaho, for whatever that would mean. But they had a great record collection. The dad did, mostly classic 60s rock, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and all the Neil Young records and all the Beatles. And so that was kind of my first time really getting into music. I feel like that beginning is sort of marked me even today, where I'm I don't know, I always feel like I'm behind a little bit. I'm kind of slow when records come out and stuff to discover new music and have my tastes change. But I'm playing it all the time. I play music every day, kind of no matter what. Just there's instruments lying around, and I'm interested. Right now, my hobby is banjo playing, just because I've always wanted to be a good clawhammer banjo player, and I'm not yet. But I've already written songs on it and put 2 of them on the new record. So,
got it. So you're from Idaho, and this new record, you kind of wanted to go back there to
for Thousand Springs. And so that was my 7th record, I think, and I just wanted to do something different and make a story out of it, because story has been really important to me, just creating a narrative and understanding. I'm kind of I feel like I'm in the meaning business, and music is one of the ways that I explore and convey meaning. And so to that end, I thought the idea of recording a record in places that were important to me as a kid was one worth pursuing. And I feel comfortable producing music. I'm pretty fast for years it was Pro Tools, and then I switched to Logic. And I like doing that stuff, and I feel a certain amount of confidence, I guess, about doing it. And I've always been a real DIY guy. So those 2 things kind of worked well together. So I did a Kickstarter and raised some money and drove out to Idaho with all of the recording gear, and then just drove around and camped and woke up in the morning and set all my stuff up, and I recorded outside a lot. And it was a really interesting experience, and definitely not without its errors. I mean, I was like, some of that stuff was like kind of charming quirks, and then some of it was, just whenever you're trying stuff, you're not going to bat 1,000. But I also, like, during that time, I was like touring basically constantly. So after I recorded the kind of guitar vocals for everything in Idaho, I spent the rest of that summer on tour, and then whatever city I was in, I'd like hit up, Kai Welch, who was in LA at the time, and he'd track some, and Anna Tivell and Jeffrey sang and played on a couple of tracks in Portland. And so it was recorded in about 8 cities after Idaho.
Okay.
So it was just like a total, safari for me. And it was rewarding too, because I'm pretty introverted, and I don't have a lot to say in like groups of people, or just rather like watch. But one-on-one I like, and so I had a lot of one-on-ones with dear friends.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of the joy.
So essentially you're in the Outback recording the skeleton of the album, and then fleshing it out as you continued to meander around.
I think that's an accurate description.
Nice. So yeah, I think narrative and story is one of the things that is recurring theme in your music, and certainly all over your website. One of the things that I think I originally picked up on through Instagram, but it recently sort of dug back in. You started Korby's Book Club. Tell me sort of the genesis of that, how often you're doing it, and if you've had any surprises from doing this thing. It seems quite whimsical at first, and I don't know if it still is.
I think it's a little, half the stuff I do is kind of whimsical. Korby's Book Club, how did that start? I think there were 2 things, because it was connected a little bit to the acting, which is, I do that a lot now. I'm kind of audition a lot, and I've been cast in some things, and I'm interested in it as a pursuit. And when I started Korby's Book Club, I had a pretty rough year last year, and took some time off, and spent about the whole summer in Montana, and came back, and I was like, I kind of needed to get back in the swing of things. So part of that was like an excuse. Part of Korby's Book Club was an excuse to just practice being on camera and talking and being engaging, and just practice, Yeah. And then the other part of it is I am passionate about books. I read a lot, and I have been since I was a little kid. And so there was another, I guess, kind of practice, which is just like, keeping your chops sharp and keeping your mind sharp, and learning how to articulate what you think about different things, and try to convey some of that passion for books to people. So those 2 things were going on. Let's see. I think I haven't put one out. I'm trying to put one out one a month, because they take a long time, and they have really nothing to do with the bottom line of anything I do. And now I've gotten kind of busy doing other things that are, I guess, making money. And so I've got to prioritize those. But surprises, like the best thing is that just turning people on to books I like. And part of the Korby's Book Club thing is, it's not beholden to contemporary literature, let's say. And I think that most of the time when people do book reviews, it's sort of part of the zeitgeist of the age, and stuff that's just come out. And that's not important to me. I'm just like, I think some of the books are kind of new. Maybe I reviewed an Ian McEwan book that was published maybe 5 years ago. That's not very new. But some of them are, I think one on Out of Africa, which I think came out in the 70s, I want to say. I mean, like, these are old books, but they're just things that I've loved from all the books that I've read. And, once in a while I'll pluck one out and highlight it. And it's really great to see people, get turned on and say that, hey, I bought that book and I really loved it. Or I just, like, random people on the YouTube. I mean, right now the YouTube views are like under 100 or something. It's just ridiculous. It's invisible. But the people who find it and who actually watch them tend to be, receptive to that, very small niche. And so, again, I don't know about your experience, but I feel like a lot of the folk singing career is a niche market, and you kind of create these little connections one at a time through people across the world. And so the numbers aren't many, but the connections are a lot more intimate or, tighter and longer lasting than might be the case in, say, pop music or rock or hip hop or something.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So that leads us to the fact that you wrote a book. I'm curious if Medium Hero is something that's going to show up in Korby's book club. That'd be kind of a meta thing.
I'm not going to review my own book, man. No, I really do for another book. That book is 5 years old now. I just realized. And
what inspired that book? I understand it's like a series of short stories.
Yeah, it's a collection of short stories.
They claim to be fiction. I'm curious, are they fiction or are they fictionalized accounts of your real life?
I think there's a little column A, a little column B. My goal in writing that book was that the reader not be able to tell which stories were pure fiction and which were based in life. And I think I achieved my purpose. I've never really, I think it's more, at some level, it's best to let the mystery be for people. So yeah, it's fiction,
Yeah.
I'm interested in fiction a lot.
Yeah. And how long's that been out that you said you're due for another one?
It came out in 2015, December of 2015. So I've since been pursuing other things, music and this TV show, which we can get into. But yeah, I have enough stories for another collection of short fiction. It's just a matter of like organizing all of that material and editing it. It's one of my few projects that I'm kind of steadily working at.
Yeah, you certainly seem to be hopping all over the place creatively and with great success. One of the things I saw for the first time today was Morse Code.
Oh yeah.
Again, it speaks to the story, but I suspect that a lot of the music videos that you've done, sort of informed the choices in making this little pilot series. Because your music videos tend not to be like, here's me strumming in a park. You tend to have a pretty intent storyline with each video at least the ones that I've seen. So I'm curious, do you feel that making this Morse Code series was a natural progression from making music videos, or has it come from a totally different place?
I'm sure there's some overlap there. Those music videos, some of them, I haven't made like a really proper music video for a couple of years. And some of them I had the core concept, and some of them was the result of the director who brought something to the game. So it depends on which one's which. But I'm interested, if you're going to make something, you should try to make it unique, as much as your budget will allow.
Yeah.
And for the Morse Code thing, I think that was less of a connection. Let's see. The connection between the music videos and the TV show was really just because I have spent 10 years in a visual media format and am interested in it. And I'm, I use Final Cut Pro all the time. It seems like almost every day for something or another. And it's another one of those things, it's like, it's a tool. And so I got good at that tool 5-7 years ago. And from that, it was kind of like a confluence of my interest in narrative storytelling via, as I explored in the Morse Code or in the Medium Hero stories. And then having that interest in visual media. But then the thing that really brought it all together for me was just like the result of being, 15 years of folk touring left me a little sick of myself, to be honest. And like, it's kind of, you're alone a lot. And I have a pretty high threshold for being alone, but so it wasn't even really loneliness. It was just like, at some level, all of your victories and stuff, all the little career highlights, you're just doing it all by yourself. And I had some experiences that really left an impression on me. Like one time I got to open for Willie Nelson at an outdoor theater in Seattle. It was like 8,000 people there, and it was awesome. It was totally amazing. It was one of the biggest shows I ever played. I got to meet and hang out with Willie, and so great. And I was just there by myself. There was no, like, I came off set. I remember I played my set. I'm like, thank you, Willie, coming around. And people are clapping, and I come off, and I'm just like, just wired. And there was nobody there but like one of Willie's roadies. And so I was like, man. And he was like, It's a good set, man. It's like, I was like, what is wrong with this picture? Anyway, but so it was just like that kind of just realizing that my life is going by, and I've just been, white knuckling it through this career, and it's a little empty. So the right around then, that's when I started getting some gigs, acting, and had an agent and stuff. And the very first time I was on set, I was all in, man. It was just like, there were 60 people on set, and, like 5 of them were actors, but there was, the gaff and the grip and the director and the DP and the caterer, and everybody was there, like trying to make this one thing as good as possible. And the collaborative element of that was just like it like got in my bones. Like it was like one of those weird moments in life where I'm like, like I want more of that in my life.
If you are enjoying this podcast, can you pause for a moment to like, review, and subscribe? Please help the world discover our music community and the wonderful artists we support. Your feedback makes a difference.
And so that began this kind of desire to like just kind of see, it's like another thing. It's like so many things I've done. I'm just like, let's just see if I'll try a little piece of it. And I wrote this scene between me and this little girl that I had met, that we had like great chemistry. And then I thought, well, what if I made this kind of sit within a larger circumstance of problems? and then I tried to like hone that situation into something as sharp and short and quick as possible. And then that became the first episode of Morse Code. But it wasn't really Morse Code at that point still. It was just like a short film, let's say. Mm-hmm. And it was like, because I didn't know if it would just be a disaster, like I cast it all. So it was the huge logistical effort. And then I like sought out all these locations, and I talked people into letting me have the place for free. And then you set up the shoot day, and then this person can't make it and this person can't make it. So you're like, we're scrapping that. Like the whole logistics thing was insane. It's been insane ever since I started doing it. But then then the day comes, I just finally somehow get 30 people to show up at the same time. And you still don't know what's going to happen. And you're trusting everybody, like you got a good DP, and you got the good audio guy, and you got the location's cool, and everybody knows their lines, and knows their wardrobe. And, then you just let it rip. And then when I edited it and got it like into the thing, I'm like, I think it's kind of good. And the other people seemed to be excited about it. And I put it out, and the Tennessee team reviewed it, and they said it was charming and quirky and charming and dryly funny. That's for the phrase. And I'm like, okay, well, that's encouraging enough. And so yeah, it's just kind of like that led to another one. I wrote another one, and I got my friend Kenneth Pattengale from the Milk Carton Kids to basically play himself. Anyway, it's taken on a whole other thing. I mean, I could talk your ear off about it, but it's still the biggest thing that I'm working on right now. And it's been 3 years going. And we just finished. There's 2 other people involved. Let's see. I made 4 episodes on my own nickel with no money, and I paid for it with my Patreon and touring. And then I had kind of some family stuff happen last year that just made me go full stop on everything. Also, I had been killing myself making these episodes, and it was unclear as to what the end product would be. And at some point, I'm okay with that. But like now I was 2 years deep, and I was proud of the product, but I was like, I'm not sure that this is worth it in the long run in terms of the sacrifice I'm making for, music and books, basically. I'm not doing any of those things because I'm just doing this show.
Right.
And then my little sister passed away, and it was just like everything just kind of unraveled, and I just had to not do anything for a minute. And so I left Nashville I spent all summer in Montana. And like during that time, I just really like kind of went through and categorically like let go of everything that I thought that I needed to be doing. I was just kind of like, just emptied the bucket, and one of those things was Morse Code. And I was really like in a place where I'm like, you know what, I'm proud of that. And it was a great experiment, and I learned a lot, and I made a lot of friends, and I'm okay if it's done now. And I came back to Nashville with that in mind. And like the first night I was there, I played a show at the Americana conference. This is almost a year ago today. And this woman was there who I didn't know, and she came up to me afterwards, and she was like, wow, I really liked that show. And you said something, you did a TV thing? I'm like, Yeah, it's a show, Morse Code. And she's like, well, I want to see it. And she's like, I'm a filmmaker too. And she started, talking to me, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even. But I sent her this stuff, and we started having coffee, and she loved the show, and it turned out that she was a pretty legit filmmaker in town and worked with really big people. And she was just kind of like, well, what do you need to keep this going? And I'm like, I don't know. $50,000 an episode. I'm just saying something. She's like, oh, we could totally do that. I'm like, what? So I'm not saying that's happening just yet, but that set the ball rolling. And through that kind of injection of interest and energy, I went and long story short, found a couple of people, and there's a team of us now, and we retooled those episodes into a tight 30-minute pilot that has been through 20 revisions. I think that's the other thing that I've been doing throughout the quarantine that I haven't, posted anything about, because it's just like, there's no reason. It's just like all behind the scenes work. But we are done with this, like what you call the pitch deck, and we're hoping to shoot the new pilot in mid-October. And it's a totally different thing. It's more money than it makes me comfortable. That's, but we'll just see. It's like at some level, it's a total moonshot dream. But I'm been in the business of moonshot dreams since the beginning. So bring it. Like I love it.
And you'll do it until someday you miss just having yourself to count on. And
I mean, I definitely keep those avenues available at all times, because it is different. I mean, man, it is funny working with people. It's, as we all know, it's just people are people, and they're unpredictable, and stuff comes up, and somebody gets mad, or it's just crazy. That said, I have been so fortunate because, like, basically without exception, everybody who's worked on Morse Code, and I did count it, and it's like almost 120 people that have been involved in it so far. They've all been wonderful, and it's just been like a total for the love project. And I'm like, that is what animates me, I think, more than anything. It's just like seeing like my own personal enthusiasm kind of reflected in other people that want to be part of something, and it's really fun. Yeah.
It's amazing how successfully you've been able to jump from one seemingly disparate project to another. Although it's after some time, you kind of start seeing the threads, which is really super cool. So tell us about, I know you've been acting in other people's videos, and you've put a lot of effort into your Patreon. What do you have going there? I know you've got a new album in the works, Man in the Marroon. Is that correct?
Yep, that's it.
Is that fed onto your Patreon page? Is that kind of where?
Well, yes and no. I think that, the patrons have been, it's hard to give them their due in terms of how important the patrons have been to my career and my freedom during the quarantine, for sure. But even before that, there's just been enough people that have kind of been interested in being along for the ride, whatever it is, because it's pretty unpredictable. I mean, that's a liability as much as anything on my part. So like when the quarantine happened, the lockdown happened, I was kind of like, well, I was already starting to kind of regroup and make some good work tapes of new songs and some older material that either didn't get released or I just wanted to revisit. And I thought, well, let's do something. Let's just make a simple record of like guitar vocal stuff. And that was the original impetus. And then as I went down that path, I would record a song or a couple of songs, then I post them as I made them on Patreon. And so in a sense, the patrons have been part of it the whole way. That said, as I went along, it was like crises and catharses, and things changed, and I realized that some songs, they just didn't really work as guitar vocals. I needed more, and so I spent a lot of time like programming stuff in my computer, and Logic has a great database of MIDI instruments, and then I was just like, man, I hate what I'm doing here. This is like exactly what I'm trying to get away from in my life, and i.e. me with a pair of headphones on, doing everything, making every choice, and having the music be exactly what I would do given these circumstances. I just needed more life. And, that was probably in June that was starting to kind of come crashing down, the reality of that. And so I knew that I wanted to involve somebody else, but I just didn't want to go back to the same people that I always use, even though they're wonderful. I just wanted something new, And it wasn't until about a month ago that I met what would be the producer for the rest of the record. So I also just needed to get this thing done because it's been kind of like, it's been great to have a project, but it's also just been like, when you have a big project, it's just like ever-present monkey on your back. And so Skylar, the producer, Skylar Wilson, he and I booked some studio time last week, got a real band in there, cracked out 6 songs. And so that plus the 4 songs that I'd kind of made with banjo and my own thing, we're in the home stretch right now. In fact, like as soon as I get off the conference with you, I'm back in tracking the vocals for the last couple of songs, but I have to be done by Friday because I'm leaving for a couple of backyard shows in Idaho. So anyway, we're finishing it up, and the pre-sales go live on Thursday. I'm doing a live stream show, and the album release cover or the album cover, I'll reveal that, which is a beautiful piece of artwork created by another folkie named Sarah Summer. So, like that right now, everything is Man in the Maroon. Like Morse Code, the producer, she's like hunting down the money, and that's like, she's got the football, she's running. I got nothing to do with that for the church. So as soon as I have like one thing clear, then it's like, okay, let's bang this out because this needs to be done. And that's kind of how I tend to live. I mean, I'm sort of like panicking right now. Like there's always this sense of like, I don't know if this is going to happen. Like, I don't know if I can pull this off. And, it's kind of a little, I think for such low stakes, actually, like financially speaking, I sort of have a high stress lifestyle.
That's funny. I think a good place to finish up is me reading your words, which are antithetical to what you just said. But I think it's a great thing. It really sums up how I feel about what's going on in the world. And this is from your latest Instagram story. We'll share your links for everybody, but I just want to read from your story here. In spite of all the crazy and maybe even because of it, I've been so encouraged to see my friends continue to make the art they were put on earth to make. It's inspiring to be part of this relentless community of artists, both in Nashville and the artistic community at large. I get emotional thinking about it. On my feed and in my real life, almost every day I witness or I am part of someone's effort to breathe new life into a world so critically in need of joy and magic and mystery. Honored to play my own small part. So that's Korby Lenker on his Instagram there. I encourage you to follow him. Wonderful singer-songwriter. Do check out the short TV series called Morse Code. You really pack a lot of emotion and feeling into a 6-minute episode. So kudos to you on that. That's a well written, well acted, super enjoyable. And I look forward to staying in touch with you, Korby. It's great to finally connect and have a little chat with you.
I really enjoyed it, Fran. Thanks for reaching out, man.
All right. Good luck. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Fran Snyder Podcast. Please subscribe, like, or share to help your friends discover this community. Also, I'd love to hear from you with any feedback or suggestions you have. And if you'd like to learn more about house concerts and listening rooms around the world, please visit and join listeningroomnetwork.com. You can email me from there. See you next time on the Fran Snyder Podcast.